97.7 FM, the sound of the Southeast.
Where the time is 23 minutes to 10 o'clock here at KC Radio, 97.7 FM. Rob Foenander with you until 11 o'clock this morning. And if you'd like to be part of the show, 599-66977 is the number. And if there's something I might be able to play for you, or if you have a message you'd like to share with the rest of our listeners, give me a buzz. Before the break, I played the man himself, Mr. Lonnie Lee, and I found a new love, and I think I've got Lonnie on the line here. Good morning to you, Lonnie.
Good morning, Rob. How are you?
I'm terrifically well. Firstly, can I thank you very much for the time you're giving me this morning, but also a huge thanks for the contribution you have made to the Australian music scene. Well done, mate, and congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been all my pleasure, as they say.
Good on you. Now, listen, you're coming to Melbourne next week. I thought it'd be a good opportunity to have a chat with you, and let's talk about the gig coming up before we talk about the history. What's happening in Melbourne, Lonnie?
Well, actually, because of Seniors Week, what we're doing is I live in Sydney, but we're driving down to Mentone, where we have a Tabcorp show on Saturday night, and then then on Monday we go to Ararat, and we do a show at the town hall in Ararat, and then we go into Melbourne, and we do a show on the Tuesdays and Wednesday at Federation Square at Deakin, yeah.
Wonderful.
And then on the Thursday we go we leave Melbourne and go out to Maryborough and do a show there, and then back to Sydney. So it's a nice little tour for us. Wonderful
stuff, mate. So you're keeping busy. You're still out there and doing your gigs. Are you travelling all over the country, Lonnie, these days, pretty much?
Yes, absolutely everywhere. Last year, for example, we went did a tour all the way up to Cairns, and we did another Victorian tour, but out west, Hamilton, and all around those areas out there. And then we go up the coast, and we go out the west of New South Wales, down the south coast. We're actually all over the place. Maybe not as much as I was doing years ago, like 50 years ago. Certainly still doing a lot.
Oh, that's fantastic, Lonnie. And look, let's talk about the years that have gone by, because looking back on your career, and I was doing a little research last night, all I can say is, wow, what haven't you done, really? I mean, you performed with some of the biggest artists in the world. You were managed for a time by Australia's great king of rock and roll, Johnny O'Keefe. When you look back on that career, Lonnie, I mean, there were many highlights. Are there any that stand out for you that you thought, wow, I've done it?
Actually, I've been asked this several times, and I've even asked myself this several times, to try and weed out the peaks as they were. And I as far as excitement is concerned, there's just been so many of them. Because my expectations haven't been that high, really. It's not as if I've sort of aimed for the stars and not happy until I actually landed on one. Things just happened. I didn't really expect anything to happen, because I didn't get in it for any other reason except to sing. And it just happened that I got a job tomorrow, and then the next week, and then the week after, and then I got a record contract, and then I got on TV, and then popularity happened, and it just sort of went like that. So everything that happened to me really was quite exciting, But if I do sift through it, and I suppose, and take the biggest things that happened, one would be, I suppose, performing, as you said, with a lot of these major international stars back in the day, the Ricky Nelsons, the Jerry Lee Lewises, the Everly Brothers, ad nauseum, all these people that we did at Festival Hall and the stadium. There's that, and then I suppose hearing my records for the first time on radio when I was like 18, 19 years of age. That was something. There were just so many things. Of course, later on in life, writing with Roy Orbison, which was something I never expected to happen, didn't even think.
How did that come about, Lonnie? You writing with people like Glen Campbell and Cher and...
Well, the thing with Orbo is I had been in America. I was living up in Seattle and performing around the areas there, and then I went down to Las Vegas and did stuff down there, and then went down to Hollywood and was there for a year, and when I decided to go to Nashville, I went over there as a songwriter. Now, I wasn't too sure. I wasn't that positive about my songs or my chances there, but I thought, okay, well, I'll give it a shot anyway. So I went there, and I was suggested that I would go and talk to the general manager of a company called Acuff Rose, which was one of the biggest publishing houses in Nashville. They had so many of the biggest hits, Hank Williams and all the big country hits and pop hits. And so anyway, I saw this guy, and he listened to my songs, and he said, "Oh my God, I can hear gold in these songs." Now, of course, for a songwriter to hear something like that, it's just you can't believe it.
Oh.
Anyway, he said to me, he followed that up by saying, "We're trying to in Nashville. It's traditionally a country place. It has been, and all our writers here are country writers, and there's just a couple of international sort of writers, and that's what we're looking for, because we want to take Nashville out of traditional country into the pop realm where all the big sales are."
Yeah.
Now, of course, that's the money that the publishers were chasing. Anyway, he said, "You're an international writer," so he said, "Would you figure writing with anybody else?" And I said, "Well, I've never have done it. I guess maybe I would if the chemistry between us was okay, and I'd give it a shot." He said, "Okay, well, I've got an idea. I'll get back to you." So he got back to me the next day, and he said, "How would you like to write with Roy Orbison?" And I said, "Oh, really?" So that's how that happened.
Oh, goodness. And another one that's listed here, and I'm really fascinated by this, Florence Henderson, who was Carol Brady in the Brady Bunch. I mean, what was it like working with Florence?
Well, she was a lovely lady, and she was managed. How I got to her was that when I was living in Los Angeles in Hollywood, I was dealing with different publishers and managers and whatever there, and I came across Don Williams, who was Andy Williams' brother, and because the Williams family, I think there was four of them altogether, and they were like a quartet, singing quartet. And then when Andy became more popular than the rest of them and went off, the rest of the guys just went into into other businesses. And Don, who was Andy's manager for a while, he also managed Florence Henderson. Now, I was suggested I go and see him about looking after, well, not so much looking after me, but getting jobs for me, performing jobs and stuff like that. So I went to see him, and he said, "Oh, you write songs as well." So I said, "Yeah." So anyway, I gave him a listen to some songs, and he said, "Oh God," he said, "Well, look, I manage Florence Henderson, and we're desperately looking for some songs for her. And can you write a couple of songs for her?" Which I did. So,
Wow.
so that happened. So many things are, when you hear the saying, being at the right place at the right time, it's just, it happens so much in show business.
Wow. And couldn't get you a gig on the Brady Bunch itself, Lonnie, by any chance, as an uncle, a long-lost uncle or something?
I know. That'll be the go, wouldn't it?
Oh, look, and tell us briefly about Cher. I mean, you also wrote with Cher.
Well, actually, what happened was there. I was actually in Nashville, and I'd been after living for around a year in LA, and while I was in Nashville, I was talking to some people there, and they said, "Oh, that there's an Australian guy in LA who's doing the Cher, the Sonny and Cher show." I said, "Oh, really?" He said, "Yes, he's doing he's producing it and looking after Cher and whatever." So I said, "Oh, really?" And they said, "Why don't you contact him?" And now I forget his name now. He was out here. He also got involved in Laugh-In when Laugh-In started in America. But he was out here working, producing the show for Digby Wolf. Remember Digby Wolf?
I do remember that name. And would that have been Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In? Is that the thing you're talking about?
That's right. Yeah, that was the Laugh-In. Yeah, this guy was a producer.
Right.
And oh God, I forget his name. I knew him well actually out here, but anyway, I'd forgotten all about him and over the years, And anyway, so I wrote to him, and I said, I'm in Nashville. I hear you're doing great things over there, and blah blah blah. And anyway, he got back to me and he said, listen, he said, now that you're in Nashville, he said, have you got any songs for Cher? Because, you know, we're looking, continually looking for songs that we promote on the Sonny and Cher program. And she's doing an album at the moment. And I'd love, you know, for you to present some songs to her. Anyway, I did that, and so that's how that happened.
Wow.
As I said, once again, it's nearly always just
right time,
just things that happen. It's not as if you go knocking on doors and, you know.
Unbelievable. Look, before you go, Lonnie, I have to ask you, I mean, what was it like performing on shows like 6 O'Clock Rock in the early years and, of course, Channel 9's Bandstand? They must have been fabulous times for you and the industry that was really developing at that stage, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. It was... well, I suppose it wasn't even really an industry. Then it was just a bunch of us guys and girls doing what we loved to do, and that was to sing and to dance and whatever we were into, you know. And we were just so lucky to being around, you know. When we all get together now, and occasionally we talk about those days, and we just all in tandem say we were just so blessed to be teenagers at that time, just when all these things were unfolding, because it was all fun. It was just amongst some of the guys, there was a bit of competition. You know, they wanted to do better than the other guy and all that. As far as I was concerned, there was no competition. I was just doing what I was doing, you know, and it wasn't racing with anybody else. But one thing we did all have in common, and that was that we were all having fun.
Yeah.
You know, it was just it was very different to what it's been for the last 40-odd years, and that's where it's a business, and where money has been the king, and everyone has to conform with formats and that bureaucrats and administrators put down, and so the creative people have to toe the line with them. Whereas back in those days, it was the creative people who were leading. You know, it was all us guys. You know, so it was a totally different world altogether for us guys.
Yeah, it was all about the music back then, Lonnie. In other words. Yeah. Lonnie, listen, mate, look, there's so many things I'd like to talk to you about, but unfortunately time is against us. I've got to thank you once again for being so generous with your time this morning, and we'll just recap those gigs again. They are public gigs, Lonnie, that you're doing, aren't they?
Yes.
People can get to them, yeah?
Yes,
which
they're
was
open gigs.
Mentone Tabcorp on Saturday the 6th. On the 8th, those people, country people in Ararat, you can see Lonnie at the Ararat Arts Centre. Tuesday the 9th and 10th of October, you'll be at Federation Square, the Deacon Centre. And then you're going country again on Thursday the 11th of October. You're going out to Maryborough, which will be a nice little trip for you.
Yes, we love it. I'm looking forward to it. I love Victoria. Ever since Johnny O'Keefe and I did our first, in fact, it was the first rock and roll tour in Australia, and that was in 1959 when we went through Victoria, and it was just absolutely wonderful. And ever since then, it's been one of my favourite places to go. Just love it, and always look forward to going back. And these places are very different and these sorts of shows are very different to what I normally do. You know, last year we played the Crown, and we played the Arts Centre in Geelong, and those places where big production shows where. These are just small, little, intimate type shows, you know, with a few stories and all that stuff, you know.
Oh, crikey. I'm going to try and get to maybe one in the Deacon Centre in Federation Square. I'll come up and say hello. Lonnie, I've got to ask you this. Johnny O'Keefe, good bloke?
Oh, lovely guy. Yeah. I mean, you know, he was very different to all of us because he was, I suppose, he had so much confidence in himself and was... and even if he wasn't a singer, if he was a mechanic, he would have had the best mechanic shop, you know, because he was a pushy sort of a guy, and that's how we all benefited from what he was, because very few of us were anything like that. Especially me, I was very shy and in the back of